All right, everyone, it's time for another round of poll analysis, the last one that we'll see in this decade, actually. Technically, it's the 30th in some places, the 31st in others at the moment, so it's really funny because of my jet lag and my insomniac experience, if you will. We've got new polling from RCP, relatively new. A new aggregate has been built. Link in the description, of course. And what we see is this. First and foremost, Biden has stabilized. He's neither going up nor down. You've got a situation where Sanders had been rising over time, but he appears to have stalled out. Now, this is terrible for Sanders because, again, he keeps refusing to pop in the polls. He may have already had a hard peak fairly early on, but the thing is, early on in polling, you get fewer polls conducted. So if somebody spikes and then recedes again, you may not see that as much in polling. This appears to have actually happened, possibly. Like Beto gets in relatively early, he rises up fairly quickly, but you don't really see that visually on a graph because you have fewer data points. Biden, arguably, he has a hard peak fairly early on, but it doesn't look quite as hard as Kamala's that comes later because you have more polling in that period of time. It's possible that Sanders has already hit his ceiling, which was below Biden's floor at the time, gone back down, and he's just going to stay in the same spot. But we can't tell that necessarily. What we can tell is this. Bernie Sanders' message, despite the fact that it resonates with 15 or 20% of the Democratic electorate on a very high level, he's got extremely high enthusiasm in group. Despite that fact, his message does not resonate well with any other voting bloc. With independent voters, he falls flat completely, it seems, other than those that lean left and even some of them. With business Democrats, he falls flat completely. What I would tell the Bernie fans is, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of enthusiasm if the numbers simply aren't there. Because then you drive turnout, if your turnout is high with the youth voting demographic, that's wonderful, but the youth votes at lower levels. The hazard is that if you nominate a socialist who has, difficulty building a larger coalition because of having a 50-plus year long career of consistently calling himself an avowed socialist, a far leftist vacationing in the USSR, so to speak, in the literal sense. If you do that, what you risk is driving turnout higher with groups that vote at higher levels anyway. Namely, Boomer and Gen X, the older voters who are more resistant to that. Gen X is considerably more conservative at this point, has moved in that direction, I think faster than the Boomers did, actually, which is ironic considering what Gen X represents. At least in semi-modern times, like when the millennials were kids, Gen X is like, oh, these crazy fucking MTV and Jackass and stuff. Now it's like, sweater vests, listening to Ben Shapiro on YouTube, I guess. You risk backlash. You risk massively higher turnout among groups that are normally not very high in turnout. People who only lean to the right. People who are true swing voters who, it's difficult for them to decide. We don't see any of them breaking for Bernie. That's a real problem for him if he becomes the nominee. And then we have Buttigieg stalled, along with Bloomberg, who caused the stall. And then we have a slight rise for Amy Klobuchar and Andrew Yang. They're technically within the sub-viability range. They're above 3 points. What I would say about them is also neither of them are really particularly skilled speakers. Klobuchar a little bit, but she's sort of like an Elizabeth Warren. She hasn't really been tested yet. The problem is that when a candidate has their moment in the sun, usually they fail. That's what we've seen time and time again. Kamala Harris, great example. First debate, she really shines in it because it's the first debate. She happens to have a moment where she does well. All of a sudden, she's in third place briefly, rising up towards Biden levels, getting all the donations. But when people became familiar with her platform, when it came time for her to use that momentum to announce her platform to a larger audience, most of them rejected her message and said she's a one-trick pony, she won a debate, that's about all. She drops out. Elizabeth Warren, she does very well there. I can't remember which debate. She starts to rise upwards. She, I think, was rising as well, partially because of the fact that the two front runners are both geriatric white males. And so she has her moment. She releases her plan. Largely because of the fumbling of her healthcare plan. Healthcare is a big issue to Democrats, especially on the further left. Elizabeth Warren took Bernie Sanders' healthcare plan, repackaged it without the term socialism, tinkered around with the numbers a little bit, was less honest about how to pay for it, put it out there as though it was her idea. And it fell flat when people realized, hey, some people would have to pay more than a 100% marginal tax rate. It's possible for someone to actually lose money existing under Elizabeth Warren's new tax plan in order to pay for her health care. Well, that doesn't make any sense. And so people rejected her socialism under a different name, and she went back down. What I would say is if Sanders has already experienced that, then with Buttigieg and Bloomberg hamstringing one another, Biden will run away with it. He'll become the nominee. This is assuming that that's the case. He runs away with it. No dark horse candidate comes in. People are still saying, well, they're going to clear the way for Hillary Clinton. After Super Tuesday, she's going to get in at the convention somehow. There'll be a contested convention, and then all of a sudden Hillary Clinton will appear with mist behind her and swinging lights and stuff like that and save the party. If you were to run Hillary Clinton at this point, she'd lose by a larger margin than any of the others. You might as well nominate Klobuchar at that point. You might as well nominate Andrew Yang. They'd do better than Hillary Clinton would do. She's fucking totally done in politics. She's a big money name that helps to organize things and maybe put out a few mafia-style hits. That's her role in politics now. She failed twice. She's fucking done. Bloomberg can't do it. Did you see Bloomberg's cringy tweet the other day? Speaking of people that are going to go down in the polls. Well, we weren't, but now we will. He's like, oh, I will turn the east wing of the White House into an office. It is some sort of office for, it looked like a call center. The irony was not lost on people that just a few days ago we were talking about his campaign using prison labor under some contracting firm. They were using prison labor to make calls for him, and then he puts out this fucking brain-dead tweet. He's totally gotten ratioed on it, of putting a call center into the east wing of the White House. And people are saying, oh yeah, like the plutocrat you are, basically. This is basically your idea of a dream come true. Yeah, that's why he won't do well. He shouldn't be running as a Democrat anyway. He should be running as another Ross Perot sort of candidate. He should have done that. I mean, if you want to be rich and out of touch, it's like, at least during a critical election year, you realize everyone's going to blame you when the Dems lose. Now, they'll blame him for the wrong reasons. They'll say, well, it made the Democrats look too old and what. Well, that's not really the problem. The problem is he got in right when Buttigieg was about to have his moment, and he never got the chance to put himself out there. Buttigieg was almost to that level. He was almost at 10 points. At that point, he would have been able to announce his platform to a wider audience of people while the lights were aimed at him and the cameras were on him. He was going to get a chance to tell him, my drug decriminalization, here's my healthcare plan, by the way, I'm young, I'm coherent, I'm not going to have an aneurysm in office probably. He had a chance to do that almost. Bloomberg comes in, steals the spotlight, because he kept teasing a run for months anyway. Steals the spotlight, runs his ad campaign, totally steals Buttigieg's gusto. If one thing is responsible for the Dems losing, it'll be the particular timing of when he got in, which is that Buttigieg, in my estimation, is the only one there with true viability. He's young and charismatic. Now, I don't care about my black voter turnout. Oh, they won't vote for a gay man. Bullshit. Yeah, they're not going to vote for Democrats because, he has a husband. Fuck that. I don't think that that's true for a second. What happens, though, is he's younger, more charismatic. He's got some political experience in a technically executive capacity, although not much. He's got a more likable personality than some of these people, and he's good at debating. Those are his qualifications. He's better at debating. Man, you don't want to have a bad debater when they're running against Donald Trump, of all people. You do not want an Elizabeth Warren candidate. And she's, she would be at the upper quarter of viability at this point within the Dem field. Keep this in mind. She'd be up there with a Gabbard or even Joe Biden. My goodness. But if I'm looking at the polls, for the Democratic Party, there's not a whole lot of movement to be had left. Look, we've got one more day within this decade. We're going to be in the 2020s. In February, first states start voting. Super Tuesday is not long from now. How many weeks is it till Super Tuesday? Isn't it like, fucking 13 weeks or something like that? That's a blink of an eye in a presidential campaign. And of course, you'll probably lose a couple of the lower tier candidates before then, like Steyer, he can self-fund forever. Gabbard refuses to leave. She's grandstanding. Yang and Klobuchar have just enough money to keep going. Some of these shoestring campaigns can continue. I don't know why anyone else is in. Honestly, the fact that Bloomberg decided to get in might be his way of saying fuck the Democratic Party. I'm almost wondering, hear me out here, I'm almost wondering if Donald Trump didn't make a call to Bloomberg asking him to run. Throw a wrench into their plans, Mike. Go fuck around with them for me. Make the Democrats look bad. Because he's certainly accomplishing that now, isn't he? He's been nothing but cringe since he got in, yet he's outspending everyone else, I think, combined in ads. There's no other reason for him to be in there, and he stopped Buttigieg. He got in at such a perfect time. I have to think maybe Trump understood Buttigieg was his real threat, and he said, okay, get in now, Mike. Do your ad thing. Do your grandstanding thing. Make sure that the cameras are on you. You look very pretty. I'm almost thinking there's at least the distant possibility that Trump is using him the same way I think he's used like Omarosa and some of these others who swear that they hate him, and it's like the way in which they act, the things they say, and when they say it, when they gobble up the news cycle, has been too perfect. It's too strategic. It's sort of like, you know, these blast points are a little bit too accurate for sand people sort of thinking, I think, when it comes to some of these things happening in the last election and in this one. I'm thinking there's a possibility. I don't want to sound all conspiratorial here, but Bloomberg is, again, he's part of this sort of not Republican, not Democrat, sort of just an independent, opportunist, really rich New York elite old white dude club, which Trump happens to be, you know, arguably the only other, like, main member of. These are the two, like, main people in that club. You know, Bloomberg's richer, Trump, of course, is more well-known, and so they sort of form this fabric of New York culture. I'm almost thinking that there could have been some collusion there. Wouldn't that be funny? Trump's not working for the Russians. He's got Michael Bloomberg on his payroll. Wouldn't that be fucking hilarious? That's about all. Peace out.